What is up, Squared Nation? Welcome back to the Four Corners, the official podcast of No Counters, No Combos. Thank you guys so much for tuning into last week's episode. It was really fun getting back to doing these types of things. This is my favorite form of media consumption, so there was definitely like a hole in my life not being able to do these podcasts on a weekly basis. But we're going to get right back into it here. Today we have a very special guest, good friend of mine, former member of the Counter Club pro team, if you will. Yeovani Hernandez, you probably have heard from him through the DBS podcast over on Fortress Strikers channel. So, Yeovani, what's up, man? How are you? What's going on?
Not much, Adrian. Doing well, a lot of studying since I went back to school for this semester, but was debating doing the PPG webcam tournament this weekend. So,
So,
see
I,
if I'll attend that. I did the core TCG one. That was a lot of fun.
I'm actually glad that you brought that up because I wanted to talk about, the alternate methods of play that we have available to us right now in the community. And shout out to all of the tournament organizers, PPG, Core TCG. I think Top Cut has been doing events also. Shout out to those guys for keeping the game alive, when there's been such a limitation on IRL play right now. But I wanted to get your perspective, being a consistent player in the game, and you've been playing for quite some time. I know we've tested plenty of times online, but I just wanted to get some of your feedback and your opinion on how these events are run. So you did mention the PPG event, so let's start with that. How is it smooth? Like, what's the transition like going from real life to playing online in a format like that?
Well, yes, PPG's this weekend, but the core one that I did, it's basically almost the same thing because the judges are in the server just making sure the games are flowing and stuff like that. Um, really didn't have any issues technically, except for when I played Marcus Cantarsi and he was streaming. It felt like a pretty feels bad, man, because like my setup was going well for the whole tournament, but it was a 15-minute delay with him, and I have no idea why. But other than that, I didn't really have any issues or anything. I know that Marcus took like about a couple of minutes because he was streaming, but like everybody was fine. It ran smoothly. It just seems like the best of ones online. Like I know it's like 30 minutes or with like a 10-minute overtime, but it feels like 50-minute rounds basically. Um, it wasn't bad. It went pretty smooth. But once you start getting past round three, a lot of people drop, and but it feels like a tournament. It feels like a casual tournament experience, I guess, is what they say. But it definitely feels better, at least for me, than being on Untapped, and because sometimes Untapped lags, sometimes Untapped doesn't have the cards. Like I like Untapped, don't get me wrong, but this feels like a more physical type of experience.
Yeah, I mean, I was having a conversation with Joey Palladino last week. Shout out to him. About the major difference between online tournaments and in real life tournament. And being like a card game player, you obviously want to hold your cards in your hand. You want to shuffle them. It might sound cheesy, but as a card game player, you build a bond with the cards that you own, and sometimes that ripping a card off the top of your deck that you actually need in that situation, it happens a lot. Sometimes you really just need to draw that one card, and when it happens in real life, you actually get to draw it. I don't know if it's just like good juju out in the universe or whatever the case may be, but playing online, you definitely lose. You definitely sacrifice that type of just raw feel for your deck, for your cards. The shuffling, all that type of stuff. I mean, again, I haven't played in any of these online tournaments just yet. I have webcammed before, in other games, so I can understand, obviously, not everybody has the same type of setup. Not everybody has the same internet connection speed. There's so many different factors that go into it. But I think at the end of the day, the important thing is the game is still being played and there's some stakes on. Like you're not just playing for the hell of it. It is a tournament. It is, being run by an official tournament organizer. So it has some weight to it. Have you participated in an online tournament using Untap at all, or you just did the webcam tournament with your actual cards?
It just a webcam because every time I was gonna enter one of those with Untap, I had to do something, so I didn't have time to participate on those, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. I think in all honesty, if I were to enter an online tournament, I would probably feel more comfortable with the webcam tournaments just because I have experience playing on webcams before, like I mentioned, and I get to actually use my cards. I don't have to worry about, untap lagging or losing connectivity. I mean, there's different things you have to worry about with camera speeds and stuff like that. But for the most part, I think having my cards in my hands physically, I feel like I'm more in control of the variance than having a random shuffle generate online. So it's actually really cool that you've participated in one of those because I wanted to get some perspective on that. At the end of the day, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure you agree with me. The most important thing is that we keep playing this game and we keep driving it forward. And right now, with the state of the world and the global pandemic and everything that's going on, if that's what's most available or more readily available to players, then that's what's going to have to be. I know locals in certain areas, depending on what zones they're in, as far as the COVID-19 pandemic is concerned, they might have less restrictions. They might be opening up locals here and there. But I know you're in Florida, right? So Florida's
Yes,
is been like.
my local was tonight, and it was streamed on Twitch.
So which is your local shop?
Pro Play Games,
Oh, it's
Miami,
PPG. Okay, okay.
Miami.
So
When they're open, because they're not open yet.
so have you gone to an actual local yet, or no?
Yes,
Okay.
I have gone to a couple actually.
And what is that? What is that like? Like how is the quote unquote meta down there in Florida?
Our meta, a lot of Vegex, a lot of Agents of Destruction, a lot of blue decks for this current meta. That's basically what it looks like. But more people show up for best of ones right now than the best of threes on Saturdays.
Mm-hmm.
But but it looks, like Vegito, a lot of Vegito, Vegex, Agents. Machado's playing Kitku right now. Trying to think. A lot of blue decks. People like blue decks here right now. So that's what I'm seeing. Um,
That's really
and I'm
interesting. That's really interesting.
yeah, I'm just playing Vegex before the Bibbidi nerf.
Right. Yeah. I mean that makes sense. One last hurrah. I think it's funny because I think the meta usually it comes down to it's like region specific. I haven't been playing too much recently. I just started going back to locals like last week. But I remember when I played the game heavily in, New Jersey, which is primarily where, I'm from or whatnot until recently, the meta was more of like it fluctuated a lot. I mean, with our player base, but I think predominantly it was more of like a control mid range meta. There wasn't really a lot of room for aggro decks unless it was like Storm or something like that, where it was just by far the best deck in the format. But I think region specifics come into play when you're talking about certain types of meta. I think there is an argument to be had that different types of the country play the game in different ways. Do you agree with that, or do you think it's just play whatever it is you feel like playing?
No, I definitely agree. I definitely think because I traveled up to South Orlando and I played at the cool stuff there during set nine, and it was like the second week of it, and they had never seen the reboot Gohan leader before, so that was like the biggest surprise for them. And like the biggest deck there was the Bibbidi deck, the Majin Buu deck.
Mm-hmm.
That down here there was only two people playing, but out there was like 4 or 5 people. Like my whole meta for that set nine was basically like 12, 13 Invoker decks,
Mm.
which there was only one over there. So like it just makes a big difference. Like here locally, I'm pretty much like the only aggro player actually. Like, or maybe one other person that plays aggro. A lot of people here like to play control,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or tempo decks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think being I I like to consider myself a mid-range player. I really do like playing mid-range strategies, but also I don't mind playing other strategies because I think the more different strategies you play, the more knowledge you're going to have about the game's mechanics, but also the more knowledge you're going to have in regards to your opponent's, like your matchups basically. So like if you're playing a specific deck, but you've played all the other decks in the format, you're going to have really good knowledge about those decks, and it's going to help you in your matchup. So I try not to pigeonhole myself in a specific type of play style, but if I had to choose one, I would say I prefer to play mid range. That's just what I like to play. I like, the game prolonging and going longer into the later game. But I know we had a conversation recently about, you've kind of started to solidify yourself as an aggro player. So would you feel like you're most comfortable playing that aggressive style?
Yeah. After playing Storm, Shenron, Boo, um, Kaba, Riku, Gohan, Vegix, like they're all kind of different. They're not all the same kind of aggressive. They're all aggressive, but they're all kind of different in their own way. But just kind of like that type of aggression, early game pace, controlling the tempo, putting the pressure on the opponent. Like I like that sort of kind of like feeling towards the game. Because I feel right now like if you're not playing blue, which is like one of the best mid-range strategies, and I don't have a Booney, so I'm not playing blue.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably playing Shenron right now as a mid-range strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that deck, but I want to like if I was not gonna play like Reboot Gohan or Vegix right now, I'd probably be playing Red Kiku. That deck's really neat. But I don't know. I feel like I either like the really aggressive strategies or I like the strategy that trying to control the game or hand destruction. But like Green Freeze is also a deck that's kind of hard to obtain. So.
Yeah, Green Frieza seems to be pretty expensive with most of the cards that it's playing. I think it's like promo locked. It's like two or three promos the deck
Yeah.
plays. So I
Well,
mean,
you definitely need the Zarbon.
right, and I think
Or
you need the Ginyu. Yeah, but I think you need the Ginyu also.
it's a good card, but like if to start off like the Zarbon is just like it's doesn't it's really the MVP of the deck, but yeah, it's like that one's more expensive than the other ones, but
Yeah,
they're still up there.
I mean that's fine though. I mean, you know, Dragon Ball has always kind of been a game that has printed very useful or slash powerful promos. I mean, if you date back to like when promo packs first started coming out, you had your 4 drop, Super Saiyan 2 Teen Gohan that he would come out for 4 energy. He was a 15k crit, and then when he would come out, he would blow up one of your opponent's battle cards. I mean, at that point of the game, like at that early stages of the game, that was the most effective form of spot removal. And at that time, a foil version of that card, it got up to like $70 to $100. I remember seeing the market value on that card. So they always had like these pretty strong promos.
Goku Black,
Yeah,
that
Goku.
was
Yeah,
hard.
Goku Black. The 2 drop blue. The 2 drop blue promo too. The one that it came out a couple sets ago. There was the
Oh yes,
that one has gotten up in price a lot too. So I think they've always printed really strong promos. I mean, Bardock Will of Iron when it first came out was like $70. Like it was insane. Um,
I feel like the promos are just getting better now. Like
yeah,
even even if it's like a $20-$30 promo, it seems like if it's a really good promo, it's a four of in your deck
hmm
type of deal.
I definitely agree with that. I definitely agree with that. And the other thing too that I find really cool is I feel like just just by accident I've found out, being more of like since I've just recently started getting back into the game, being more of a budget player, I've found
I've
out.
seen that.
Right. I found out accidentally that there's two different types of ways of playing your deck. You can play the, bare bones budget strategy, or you can play the super expensive version, and you can have success with both of them if you're playing into the strategy. I mean, it's weird because in Dragon Ball right now, like the most expensive cards, you can quote unquote call them staples. I mean, Stay in Instincts is really expensive. The Ribrianne is really expensive. You know,
Abuni.
oh yeah, Obuni is super expensive, and you could call them staples essentially for their specific strategy. So
Koitsukai for
right,
black.
right. So having, you know, very expensive staples is kind of crappy because if it's a card that's needed for a specific strategy, but you have to go and shell out all this money, it's definitely going to detract, you know, a large portion of the player base. And I'm not saying that Bandai shouldn't continue to print money because that's what's going to keep the game alive too. Not only us playing the game, but Bandai making a significant amount of profit off of it. So it's important for the longevity of it. But I'm just glad that there are options because I think that you shouldn't be backed into a corner and you shouldn't be forced to play a certain way. I think there's other card games that happens to, like Yu-Gi-Oh, for example. It's essentially power creep the game.
I was gonna say
Yeah,
Yu-Gi-Oh as well.
you're forced to play a certain way or you just can't play the game. And I think that's not healthy, but Yu-Gi-Oh's been around for almost, 25 years, so it's not going to go anywhere. Um,
That's true.
but yeah, I mean, moving into set 11, I've seen some of the tournament promos that are going to be coming out, and they seem really good. They seem really essential for certain strategies and stuff like that. So, if local shops can get a hold of tournament kits moving into set 11, I think it's going to be really, really good. I think locals will start picking back up, hopefully, as we get less and less restrictions because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But talking about set 11, you're the aggro player, so I kind of wanted to get your opinion moving into set 11 on what do you think moving into set 11, moving into that set 11 format are going to be the better, maybe not the best, but like the most played aggro decks in that format.
Just said 11.
Yeah, like moving into set 11 from what we have legally to play, obviously no
Oh,
Bibbidi,
okay.
all that stuff like that. What do you think? Like, do you think Reboot Gohan is still going to be played? Do you think, Xeno Goku will see a lot of play on an aggro level? What's your opinion on that?
I believe that Reboot Gohan is always gonna have a place. Doesn't like the yellow matchup due to release from Evil, but I mean, I'm sure that there's probably gonna be a little bit more answers in Set 11, but it's always a deck if you're not prepared for it, and that's what you have to play against. Like it just becomes rough. Reboot Gohan, Vegex, AOD. I don't think they're going anywhere. Honestly, I still think they're all strong in their own ways. Although, if I had to rank them right now, because coming into set 11, the Red Brawly deck and Majin Vegeta are the two decks that I've played with from that set, and I like the Red Brawly deck a lot more than Majin Vegeta after testing, because that one drop Red Brawly promo just makes that deck so consistent, ridiculously consistent. In fact, that there's like set 11 kind of brings us a lot of decks that are really aggressive or there's tempo, so
Mm-hmm.
it's really interesting. So I mean, Skillless still has a place because Red Skillless tends to be a little bit more aggressive, but like those kind of decks, what those are 6 decks I've named so far. Those are like those would be the most common ones if they were to show up. I would feel.
Do you think there's any room for a black leader that's not named Vegex to crack into that upper echelon
Oh
of
yeah,
played decks?
Dark Dark Broly.
Dark Broly, really? You think that's gonna
Yeah.
be the leader to play, the black leader to play?
If you're not playing Vegix, people will definitely be playing that deck. That deck is. It didn't look strong from the start because when we were talking about it on Kevin's podcast, we were kind of like underwhelmed because we didn't understand. But that's like an aggro control deck from the developer notes. But yes, it's a deck that rewards the pilot for knowing the understanding and the fundamentals of the deck, though. So that's one of the reasons I didn't name it because I don't think everybody's gonna pick it out.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I agree
It's
that
all good.
I agree that it's a strong deck. It's a strong. What I like about it is it's a strong deck that's archetype specific. I really think that
Yes.
that's really good because Bandai hasn't really done that before, where they've made really strong archetype specific decks where you're 40 to 45 cards of your main deck is going to be archetype specific, and you might have room to splash a couple things here and there. So I really like that it's very archetype specific, and you kind of have no choice but to play it that way because of the way everything intertwines with the leader. But I think what's going to turn people off, maybe not the more veteran players, but the people that are just like either consider themselves casual or are just getting into the game. It's not the easiest deck to pilot. It's definitely not, turn sideways and win on turn 4. Like you have to, like you said, you have to know the ins and outs of the decks. You have to know your matchups, and you have to know when and when not to play certain things. But I think it's going to be a really affordable deck that's going to definitely crack into that 1.5, tier 1.5, I think, for sure.
A lot of people think it's tier one, and I want to see. I'm not exactly sure on my placings for that deck, but I think it's strong enough, and I think if somebody is willing to take the time to pilot it, I think it'll get good results. I think set 11 brings a lot of diversity. I think I think there's gonna be multiple decks that are like there'll be like in tier one there'll probably be like 3 or 4 decks that are like here these are the best decks, more than just like 1 or 2 decks. I think there's gonna be a lot of diversity with set 11 because the set 11 didn't power creep like most of these sets. It was kind of like here you go, these are a lot of good decks, and let's see where everything drops and follows.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see that. I definitely don't feel like set 11, like the cards in set 11 are really good, but they're not pushing anything else out. Like, uh, there's still going to be older cards that are utilized because set 11 hasn't really printed replacement cards, but they've printed new cards. So, usually in card games, you get quote unquote new cards every set, but there's a lot of cards that do similar things. Granted, the entire card pool for set 11, I'm sure there are cards that are similar in other sets, but for the most part, it's pretty original. Like, there's a lot of cards in this set that no other set has. There's a lot of new counter plays, there's a lot of new, counter timing cards, there's a lot of new archetype specific things like we talked about. You have Dark Broly, you have the Demon Clan with Garlic Jr. and stuff like that.
I
You know,
wish that deck was better.
yeah, I mean, you have but the thing is, that's the thing, right? Like it's coming out just now in set 11, but you have room for it to grow moving forward if they want to make more archetype specific things for Demon Clan. But
Well, they're making Shenron grow every set though now. I'm kind of surprised how much support that deck is getting. Not gonna lie to you.
yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those decks that's gotten support. It's getting support in 10. It got support in 10. It's getting support in 11. It's probably gonna get support in 12. But it might cut off after that. Like after the block rotates out,
Oh
it
yeah,
might not get anything else. So unless you get like an anniversary box or some like expansion set here and there or whatever. But for the most part, I mean, I think Bandai has done a really good job of. I don't know if it's just their design philosophy has shifted, but they've done a really good job of balancing their new cards without pushing older cards out, if that makes any sense.
yeah, it does. Cause like set seven, set eight, power creep called set seven to
Oh
set eight
yeah,
to nine, or sorry, set eight to surge. Surge just dominated. Then surge into nine. It was like surge was there with all the set nine decks. It's like, but there was continual power creep. I think with set 10, and I think I mentioned this with Kevin as well. We kind of feels like a soft reboot for the game without actually rotating stuff out. And what I mean by this is that they took a lot of old cards that weren't seeing play and some gave them some new cards or support to help other decks. Like Unisons really help older decks. Like Set 10 did a great job of bringing back decks with Unisons or giving them new cards. It breathed life into a lot of decks and made a lot of. I mean, some were more playable than others, granted, but like it really helped with the landscape that unisons provide this extra dimension to decks, and it made the game. Because think about it, if you just and you're just coming back now, so you maybe you're buying your set 10 product and you're collecting that and all that. But if you think about it, all you really need are just the unisons from set 10, the counterplays from set 10, and then what you pick whatever you want to play, and you're pretty much good. Um, you don't have to spend as much money because a you might just fill the slots with generic cards, or b you're picking a set from a deck from set 10 or set 11 that just fills itself. So it kind of helped out players in that aspect instead of having all these expensive draft cards be like the shell of your deck.
I 100% agree with that. And I talked about it with Joey on podcast last week. Bandai is a really good job, does a really good job of making mistakes, but then correcting those mistakes. Draftbox 4 was a nightmare. Draftbox 5 was good. It kind of did, make up for Draftbox 4. But I agree with you 100% what you said about Set 10. If you look at Set 10 as a product, and I'm pulling up the card list right here now on the website to just look at some of the cards. If you look at Set 10 as a product, right? You have your thematic cards, you have your good like staple cards, you have your unison introduction. Obviously, this is the first set that we've gotten unison cards. And then you have your commons, like your bulk essentially. But what I will say, and this is set 10. So I played Dragon Ball when it first came out. I took a break for a year, so I missed set 8 and set 9. But I've seen some of the cards in set 8, seen some of the cards in set 9, and I have a lot of set 10 product. What I will say is, excuse me, after purchasing or after obtaining the amount of set 10 product that I have, I don't feel like there are that many invaluable cards in set 10. And what I mean by that is whether it's a common, an uncommon, a rare, a super rare, the rarity doesn't matter. I don't feel like there's a lot of useless cards in set 10. And I think that Bandai did a really good job of printing that type of set, introducing a new block, because set 10 is the first block in the Unison Warrior block. So you're getting 10, 11, and 12, and then whatever supplemental in between. So for new players, like brand spanking new, that have never played the game before, set 10 is a really attractive product because you're going to get a good amount of usable cards that you can mix and match and start off with your mini collection and expand moving forward. So I think, in my opinion, set 10 is probably one of, if not the best sets Bandai has released to date. What are your thoughts?
Off pure value, of course. I saw my buddy David go through 4 or 5 cases of set 10, and the pull rates were they said genuinely improved. However, Dormant Potential and Mecha Gabora Unison are the two hardest cards to obtain from that set that aren't secret rares.
Mm-hmm.
Those were the two cards that I saw. Like, he pulled from 4 or 5 cases, 7 or 8 dormants, and 6 Mecha Gabora Unisons. And that's a lot of boxes.
Yeah, that's a
So,
lot.
so no, I think it's a great product. I think if I was ranking the set 10 would definitely be in the top 3 sets they've made overall. It's really helped out the game. I also like the direction they're taking with the tournament promos. And, I mean, yes, they're giving us a lot of tournament promos, but they're making the tournament promos for the decks inside the sets and not just making generic tournament promos that are just
Correct.
like really good.
Correct.
Outside of the trunks, um, blue promo, but I really like the direction that they're going because I was talking about this with Sandy Cater before he took his break. Now, we kind of noticed that it all these the power creeps and all these different sets, and it was just kind of not that it was getting hard to keep up with. I mean, for the people net decking out there, yeah, I'm sure it'll be very expensive to keep up with. It's an impossible rate, but for us, we were talking about it, and it just seemed impossible. Like going to set to set to set, and just seeing like the best decks just like okay, cool. Now there's a new net best deck, and that's pretty hard to keep up with,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
And he made Vegex. Was the first person to make the Vegex video. Showed the world the whole chain. He also was the team stage zero guys. Sorry, I almost botched that. They worked on the agent deck, and you know, but he really wanted to play agents, but he feels like it was just gonna pop power grab, so he just took a break and stuff like that. But it doesn't look that way though. It
Yeah.
looks like Set 11 is just gonna breathe life into the game. I will say it's obnoxious how good Green is right now, though.
Yeah. I mean, green has always been, I shouldn't say always because it hasn't always been. But green, I want to say, like from set 6 on, green is when when they really started focusing on making green like a powerful color. I mean, from when I started playing the game, some of my more favorite cards were in green, but it just felt unplayable because blue was probably in the beginning and probably now, like, it's just the most, it's like the best color in the game. It's just the most supported color in the game. Yellow was up there for a while too. Even now, yellow is still pretty good. Kind of underwhelming what they've gotten, but you know what I like about the specific colors is they have their identity. Blue has always been the energy ramp, or energy manipulation. Sensu bean, and recycling energy, stuff like that. Now they have this new identity of bouncing cards back to your hand and bouncing cards to the bottom of your deck, which I think is phenomenal. Yellow has always been that I'm going to put your stuff in rest mode so you can't do anything color. Green has always been the spot removal color. Red has always kind of been the aggro slash, battle power reduction color, and black was always a support color until set 11, where they're starting to make that shift, that transition, so that black can have its own, like, it can have its legs. And I think that, that was a really smart move. The way Bandai did it, they introduced a fifth color to the game very, very early with the overwhelm mechanic. But the way they introduced it was this color is going to be a support color that you can splash in your current decks for more support. We're not just going to make it its own archetype to where you have to play 50 black cards. Now I think there's enough of a card pool for black to make the argument that, okay, you can have a standalone black deck because there are cards that specifically say, if all your energy is black, do this. So I think, they introduced their fifth color very early. They kind of had it like a little testing period with it. And now they're deciding, you know what, let's give a fifth color to the game. Because if you look at Magic the Gathering, which is basically, where Dragon Ball gets a lot of its influence from, Magic's got five cards and five colors, and they've had five colors for a very long time with lots of success. So I think it's really cool to see the growth and the evolution of the game in the right direction for the first time in a long time, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've always thought as Dragon Ball as Baby Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh put together, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically Magic 2.0 at this point. I mean, the only thing that Dragon Ball doesn't share with Magic is the specified lands, so you can charge any card for mana, and there's no summoning sickness in Dragon Ball, which, if there was summoning sickness in Dragon Ball, it would literally be a completely different game. Like, it would not be the same game. I think there's a lot of strategy that goes into it, not having summoning sickness or not having any type of, waiting period before your cards can attack. I feel like the strategies that you play would be so different.
Interesting you bring that up because Bandai's other new game has Summoning Sickness,
Yeah.
like a completely different game.
Yeah, I mean, the Digimon card game, which we'll talk about briefly. It is a Bandai property. I don't think that game needs to have summoning sickness. I think the game, the
One
way,
thousand percent.
yeah, I think the game, the way it's played, like, it's the game's currency being the memory gauge. I think it plays into the whole aspect of, okay, I can play whatever card I want, but I have to pay the game's currency for it, and if I overpay, my turn is completely over. So you can spend like the first 20 minutes of the game setting up your board and not even being able to attack because of the way the memory gauge works. So I don't think that Digimon needs summoning sickness. It has it. We'll see how it goes when it comes to the States in November and January. with the official release. We'll just have to see how it goes. I hope the game does well. I'm a very big fan of Digimon as an IP. I like the game's mechanics. There's just a couple things I might change. The summoning sickness I don't agree with. The not having a mulligan I don't agree with. Um,
Oh, that mulligan is the biggest one in my book.
yeah, I mean, there's just a couple things here and there that I would change, but this is this is a Dragon Ball channel, not a Digimon channel. So let's get back on topic. So with set 11 coming out, right? There's a couple of different archetypes that I'm interested in specifically. The one I'm interested in
I
the
was
most,
gonna ask you that.
yeah, the one I'm interested in the most is the yellow skillless Gohan Icarus. I think,
Yes, I figured that was
yeah,
what I was gonna hear.
yeah, that is by far the one I'm 100% interested in the most, and it's just to me it's okay. I mean, it's a watered down version of skillless. Because it does similar stuff to skillless, just not as good as skillless. The only gripe I have is I feel like this leader should have been an untap 2 leader, maybe untap 1, draw 1. Like, draw 2 is okay because you're going to get hand advantage, but I rather have energy open, to make plays. So I wanted to ask you, as far as awakening conditions, we have draw 2, we have untap 2, we have untap 1, draw 1, we have the surge awaken, which probably is not going to be prevalent moving forward. But out of those three, draw 2, untap 2, and then one of each, which one do you prefer as far as awakening is concerned?
Untap two,
Yeah.
and it's not even.
Yeah, so I agree. Like, I think in a resource based game, being able to reuse energy is always going to be important, especially now with these new unison cards. You want to windmill slam them on the board as soon as you get them, but you have to kind of ask yourself that question. Is it worth it for me to tap out to play this unison card? My opponent might be able to blow me out next turn if they have the proper setup. So, Dragon Ball has always been a game of, should I or shouldn't I? And I think, having the unisons adds a completely different layer to the game now because essentially you have a card on board that's very hard to interact with, that if you let it sit, it's going to accrue a lot of value over time, and it's just going to be more and more of a nuisance to deal with. So it's kind of like a pseudo, blocker, so to speak, because your opponent has to pay so much attention to your unison so that it doesn't get out of control, and then you end up winning the race to the end of the game.
It feels that way. It definitely does. I mean, Zeno was like the biggest culprit of that in set 10. Like, if you just let Zeno sit there, he's just gonna get all the value, and you're never gonna take him out. Shenron as well for Red, but Red wasn't that great in this meta, so nobody really played that unison outside of like Pilaf or Yamcha, which weren't meta anyway. I mean, Yamcha did top the 1K at CGU, but that had the ban list in effect, so
Right.
I'm not counting because the ban list isn't until October.
No, yeah, exactly. And I like the addition of unison cards. I think it shows forward thinking of Bandai to start introducing, newer mechanics and stuff. I still am on the fence on whether or not they should be able to attack or not. Because planeswalkers and magic can't attack. They can, get effects and stuff like that, and you can't really defend them unless you use a blocker or something like that, or like a combat trick, to stop the attack or whatnot. But being able to attack a unison card, being able to attack, there's not a lot of cards that interact with unisons specifically. So it's like,
There's about three.
yeah, it's like release from evil. It says the attacking card, so you can release from evil. Um,
Absolute confidence from Blue, the yellow 9-drop Brawly. That was like a promo.
oh yeah, the older promo. Yeah, I remember that card.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's not a lot.
Yeah, there's not a lot. There's maybe one other card that I can't think off the top of my head, at least for right now until set 11. The set
It-
11 does a little bit more ways.
oh yeah, of course. I mean, again, and the introduction of unisons was in the first portion of this new block. So of course you're not going to have everything come out, and it's strategic. You introduce a new mechanic, you introduce these new cards with unisons. you want, as Bandai, you want the players to use them. You want the players to utilize them. So if they're printing these new cards and then they print answers to these new cards in the exact same set, it's kind of a wash, right? You're not going to have that time period where unisons are dominating a specific format, and then, what was the point of printing them in the first place? So I think they did it right. There's probably going to be much more interaction with unisons in the third set of the block, when you get set 12. So I'm not even worried about it. Everything always has like a beginning, a middle, and an end. So I think introducing unisons when they did was really smart. But there's definitely a couple of them that are just snapped and half broken. Um, I like the 2-drop ones. I feel like those are the most balanced of the unisons. I feel like paying 2 for a unison is okay. I mean, anything more than that, like, I'm a stickler when it comes to like economy and energy, like resource management. I don't want to pay 3 or 4 for a unison. I just feel so bad doing that unless I really, really have to. But being able to pay 2 and then start gaining value off of it feels pretty good. The other thing I wanted to talk about unisons in specifics is with set 11, we had them with set 10 rather, we had them introduced. And then you have like the really strong unison, and then you have like the watered down version of the unison. Every color in set 10 got at least 2 unisons. They got, their really good one and then like the not so good one. So I think it's all.
I love how green they're all good.
Yeah, yeah, the starter deck one is good. Demigir's probably the best one because it's a 1-drop, and then Bardock is just insane. But
They're all
I like the fact that as a player base we have options. It's cool to have options, because not everybody.
Meta Cooler, the promo that you didn't mention,
Oh
is
yeah,
really good.
yeah, that card's really, yeah. When you look at the green unisons, they're that meta cooler is ridiculous. It's
Like
just
I remember looking at all the unisons from the set. I'm like, why is green so far ahead of all the other unisons? And I just kept wrapping around. And then I saw Dormant Potential. And I'm just like, okay, well they're clearly helping green become good again. I was just kind of like, wow, okay, like this is what they did. It just really took me away. Like the other unison that really impressed me the most was the Vegex one. You play for free, get a marker, then dump a card. I was
oh
like,
yeah.
wow, okay, that's really good too. I liked the Shenron as well, but like red needs to be dominant. It has to be like the meta deck for that. Like Bulma makes good use of the Shenron because she untaps too, but it's just red's not seeing a lot of play right now outside of like Bulma or Yamcha. So
Yeah, I think the Sin Shenron is really good. I think what makes him good is the 20k. I think that's phenomenal. Like just being a 20k unison, that's gonna be
yes,
so hard to deal with. But he's also really good. Like, you can attack your opponent's active mode battle cards. You can choose 2 of your opponent's cards, neg them for 15, and then he gets another marker. And then his -2 is basically for seeing hit. You rip a card out of their hand, it's 25k or less. So I think he's got good utility. He's a really good card. And for 3 energy, like, I'm okay with paying 3 energy for a 20k that's going to allow me to, essentially control my opponent's board. I mean, minusing 2 of your opponent's battle cards, 15k now is huge. Like, that's insane because you could potentially clear 2 cards off the board and you're getting a mark. Like, that's his +1 skill. You're not negging anything. That's just his +1. You're going to be able to do that every single turn. You're going to be able to +1 uptick it. So,
but
I,
when you combine that with is that all you got? You
oh,
could potentially clear 4 cards.
exactly. I mean, and when you look at that one, and then you look at the Vegito, the Unison of Might. I mean, he's the four energy. I mean, he just doesn't. I mean, he's also 20k, which is great. But his +1 is what? Draw 1, then you can play a 2-drop mono red card from your hand. I mean, I guess it's not bad, but
I felt like it was like meant for the peel off deck, and I don't know. It just feels like he's there type of dude. Like it's not bad, it's not great, it's just there. Is really what I took away from it.
he costs 4
It's
energy.
just
Like, why does he cost
yeah.
4? Like, okay, yeah,
I
he's
think they
20k.
felt it was gonna be too strong.
Is it though? Like a 20, he's 20k. He's got three different skills. He only has one skill that adds markers, and then he has two skills that reduce markers. So you're gonna play him. He's gonna have four markers. He's gonna go up to five in his first turn. So that's fine. But I'd rather this guy be a 15k and pay two energy or three energy for him than pay that fourth for energy. When you're looking at the direct counterpart being Sin Shenron, another 20k, but you're only paying three for it. It just doesn't make sense because Sin Shen. Right. Exactly. That's my whole point. Like Sin Shenron, like if you're doing a direct comparison between the two of these guys, Sin Shenron is by far the better red unison between the two of these guys. But he costs one less. It costs one less, which I don't get. Like the unison, the Vegito is way worse, but he costs one more energy and he doesn't do nearly as much as Shenron does. It's just crazy to me.
It's funny because Meki Gabora for yellow is 4, but that's like the ultimate game changer when you bring him down. Vegito doesn't exactly change the game, and that's kind of the issue.
Yeah, and then you look at something like Zeno. Zeno's only two blue, and he gets plus two markers to ramp. That's ridiculous.
Oh yeah, no, Zano snapped in half. Although, well, going into set 11, let's see if all this unison, like the takedown markers, or Majin Vegeta being a double strike leader, like if it brings tones down Zeno a little bit.
I mean, yeah. I mean, of course, if you have specific keywords, double strike, dual attack, whatever, that's always going to be really good against unisons. Which is why I don't understand the lack of attention people are paying to this Goku Xeno leader. I mean, he's a static double striker on the back. Like at worst, he's gonna be mowing down your opponent's unison cards. So I don't know like what like people are like most people are
I
saying.
think it's a hard deck to build.
I mean, I
Or you're
guess.
trying to make it like Vegix 2.0, and I don't think that's exactly where you want to go.
No, that Xeno Goku's gonna want to overwhelm every single turn, so you have to play a heavy overwhelm strategy.
Yes, I agree.
So I mean, yeah, I think we were spoiled with Vegex the way Vegex plays, but Vegex is not an overwhelm deck. Let's just be honest, it's not at all. So when you're taking a leader like Xeno Goku who wants to overwhelm every single turn, that's something that you have to take into consideration because that's what the deck wants to do naturally. It's just what it does naturally. If you start trying to force these, um, these
Timing.
yeah, the time agents. If you try to force this awkwardness into the deck, it's not going to pay off. And I think that's what's turned people off because it's one of those things where it's just a generic leader. So there's 100 million different ways you can build it. It's not like Black Broly, where yeah, Black Broly might be a hard deck to pilot, but it's an easy deck to build because it's just archetype specific stuff. This
For
Goku's
the most
just
part, yeah.
right. This Goku's just a generic black leader, so you have to dig into the black card pool and see, okay, well, what am I going to benefit from off of this burst three? Am I going to be playing a draw heavy deck? Am I going to be playing a search heavy deck? I want to get awakened as fast as possible so I can get my double strike. Stuff like that.
Yeah,
So
he has the potential to awaken turn 2 with the Vegeta unison that Bandai wants you to play with him.
not only that,
Just
dude, there's older cards like Beguiled Mass Saiyan the Beguiled Warrior that brings out, he's an overwhelm 4 for 1 that brings out another Mass Saiyan from your hand. If you bring out Time Trauma, you take 2 life, you warp one of their battle cards. You're getting 2 bodies on board for 1 energy.
I did that in Mass Saiyan. It was a nice, nifty combo.
Yeah, that's what Demigur used to do all the time back when the Beguiled Warrior first came out. That was the big awaken turn. You play the Beguiled for 1, you bring out the Black Mass Saiyan, you put yourself in awakening range, use 1 energy for something, awaken on tap 2. You have Wormhole on the back so you can overwhelm again. And if you have the Fields card that you can remove 3 underneath it for all your overwhelms to stay on board. I mean, that's what people need to start thinking. They need to start thinking outside of the box, with these overwhelm strategies that, Vegex completely threw out the window because, it was a completely different way of playing black with the burst.
Universe 3 also kind of spoiled us
Yeah, exactly.
too, and now they're banned.
Exactly my point. So I think basically what I'm getting at is I love the color black. I think black has always been a good color for this game, and seeing that it's getting some some love as to try to stand on its own, I'm really excited for it. So I'm definitely going to be experimenting with these mono black strategies and stuff like that. But I definitely think that you're really going to have to be creative with how you build the decks, because certain strategies are going to lend themselves to specific things. And I don't think you just jam in time agents in every single black deck because they're just burst leaders. I don't think that's the way to go.
Yes, I agree. What is the first set 11 deck you're gonna put here?
Um, I don't know. It depends on how much of set 11 I actually can get a hold of, and it depends. It depends. It all depends. I mean, if in a perfect world, like if I had every single if I had or if I had availability to every single card in set 11 day 1, I would probably go and try to do the Super Saiyan 4 Gohan leader. Like that's like
Okay.
really the first deck I would try to build, because I'm really intrigued. Like that leader is so under the radar right now because Broly and Goku are getting the most of the love as far as black leaders are concerned. But I really
Yeah,
think there's a lot of untapped potential with that SS4 Gohan leader. Being able to
I've seen you
choose.
play it.
Yeah,
It's pretty aggressive.
yeah, that's the thing. It can be super aggressive. You can try to build it mid range if you want to. I think it lends itself to aggressive strategies because that leader probably want to get to the backside as quickly as possible. Um, but being able to overwhelm and then give your leader plus 5k and double strike or crit, depending on the situation, could be huge. I mean, again, if there's unisons on the board that you want to get rid of, you can give a double strike and just go after the unisons. Um, I just wish.
I thought of
Go ahead.
keep going.
What were we gonna say?
No, I was gonna say you could give Gohan crit and then play a Kraken space time to give him double strike crit.
Exactly, exactly. There's a lot of little nifty things. I think the one card that I'm definitely looking forward to in the black color is the Haru Haru, the one drop that gets double strike when you have a unison out. I think
I
that's
can't wait to play
yeah,
that in Vigil.
that's gonna be a great card. The only thing I wish was for the Piccolo unison to be a little better than it was, and I think we talked about this on Fortress Strikers podcast. His minus ability is just not that good, but it's okay. I mean, it is what it is.
I feel like it's like a two of since you're just gonna be able to find it so automatic.
Yeah. I mean, I've been playing one of in my lists, and I've luckily not charged it, and it's worked out fine. I mean, it's one of those. I mean, not charge it. I haven't had it gotten in life. It's just one of those things where, like, okay, if I activate main and look for the Piccolo and he's not there, okay, I know he's in my life, so I know one of the cards in my life pile, and at least I get to look at my deck and see what else is there, and just shuffle it. I don't mind playing it at one. It's not the main unison I'm going to be using for that deck.
Yeah.
Primarily, I'm probably going to be using the SS4 Vegeta unison, depending on the situation, but the SS4 Gohan unison is also pretty useful. So it's going to be interesting to see how all that plays out. But, that's probably the deck I'm going to try to build first. What about you?
Well, since I have the PPG regional when the set comes out, I think I'm gonna go ahead and build Red Brawly from the set. I just don't like that I have to go into that one drop promo, but that's most likely what I'm leaning towards because that deck is very aggressive. It's different. It's not the same kind of a red deck. Um, like I told you, I was testing my Vegeta Green, and if you just play with the boot chain, it just kind of becomes almost linear and kind of predictable. And the bad part about that deck is like if you play the Dark Brawler Unison, if they aggro you down, you can't play Dark Brawler on 3 and Awaken and then play the boot chain on top of that, which is where you get most of your value. And some people feel he's a worse Green Gohan. I feel like it's a Vegeta and Gohan are the same, especially when you play that Frieza crit combo card from Drop Box 5. You can make double strike crits, which is really really good. You have to make them fear that you're not gonna give them cards. But I ended up on Red Brawly. I like Swap. I like that Storm kind of feel, and it's super aggressive. And that's those were Majin Vegeta and Red Brawly were the two decks that on the podcast like we were all testing. So probably gonna go with that.
I mean, it sounds good. Sounds good to me. I mean, I played against that Red Broly. I mean, it seems really good. It's another way of swapping into a chain. I mean, it's definitely not as busted as the Lineage chain from back in the day, but only time will tell to see how all of this stuff is going to work out. So we're actually at almost an hour here. We're going to start wrapping everything up. I want to thank you for coming on. Definitely got some of your insights. We're two different types of players, so it's nice to get your opinions and stuff like that. But for those that are listening, where can we find you if we need to listen to you, talk about Dragon Ball more, or if we need to get into contact you, where can all these people find you and get in touch with you?
You can find us. Kevin made a DBS podcast Facebook page where you can go and join and interact with us. You could go to his YouTube channel, Fortress Striker, and he took a break for this week because he has a lot of stuff going on. But we put out a podcast every week. We record usually on Friday and put it out Saturday or Sunday, weekend releases. And I usually post in like the Vegeta Saiyan Army. Shout out to Frank Castle, the boy. Post there, post the when we post the podcast and stuff like that. But yeah, mostly on the podcast. Haven't interacted on the Facebook page as much, so I usually interact in the Vegeta Saiyan Army or some of the other kind of like Facebook groups for like the specific decks. Yeah.
All right. Well, like I said, thank you again so much for coming on. You're more than welcome to come again in the future if there's anything that we need to talk about in specifics. Don't forget to check Yeovani out with Kevin and all the other guys on the Fortress Striker DBS podcast. I'm sure you'll be able to find it on Facebook. But with that being said, we're going to get on out of here. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next week. Be there or be squared.